In the harsh sunlight above the vast expanse of the Kalahari in South Africa, a scene unfolds that astonishes even the most seasoned wildlife explorers. An old, battered brown hyena carefully carries a lion cub in its jaws, slowly moving toward a small depression in the ground where there is shade and precious moisture. In the scorching heat of the African dry season, the hyena is not hunting. It is trying to shield the tiny lion cub from the sun, which could take the life of this weak creature. This is not what nature intended. In the eternal cycle of wildlife, hyenas and lions are rivals, enemies, eternal opponents. An adult lion can tear apart a lone hyena, and a pack of hyenas will not miss a chance to steal prey or attack a vulnerable lion. So what happened to this odd couple? Why would an old hyena try to protect a creature that should be her prey or her threat? This is the story of Asha, a hyena who belongs to no world, and Kira, a lion cub on the brink of death, and how they found each other in a world that accepts neither of them. The dry heat of the Kalahari pressed down on the cracked earth. Red dust rose from the tracks of animals on the parched soil. It was the height of the dry season, when life concentrated around the last waterholes, and the laws of survival were harsher than ever. Asha moved carefully through the yellowing grass. The old hyena, with her tattered brown fur and the long scar above her left ear, were the marks of a life half wild, half tame. Age had made her gait less nimble, but her dark brown eyes remained alert, always scanning her surroundings with a wary eye. Asha was born at the Johannesburg Zoo. She spent the first 3 years of her life in an artificial environment, where she was fed regularly and had frequent contact with people. When the zoo closed due to financial problems, a reintegration program returned her to the wild. For hyenas, a species with one of the most complex social structures among mammals, such reintegration was almost impossible. Asha carried with her the scent and behavior of a captive animal. She did not know how to hunt in a pack and did not have a place in the strict hierarchy of her kind. The first time she approached a wild hyena pack, she was brutally attacked. The alpha female tore her left ear apart, leaving a permanent scar. The message was clear. Asha did not belong here. From then on, she lived on the edge of the wild world, not wild enough to be accepted by its own, and not tame enough to seek protection from humans. Her territory was a fragile space between two worlds. Asha became an expert at hunting alone, something almost unthinkable for a pack-like species like the hyenas. She caught small prey, and sometimes scavenged without being driven out. A life of solitude, but Asha adapted in her own way. This year, the dry season was especially brutal. There had been no rain for 3 months, and water sources were running low. The great herds had migrated south, leaving the parched land with little food. One early morning, a rare rainstorm hit the land. It lasted less than an hour, but it was enough to bring precious moisture to the parched soil. Asha, who had just left the rocky cave where she had taken refuge from the rain, inhaled the unfamiliar scent of damp earth after weeks of drought. But there was another scent in the air, the scent of blood. With her keen sense of smell, Asha followed the scent through the grass, still wet from the rain. The scent led her to a large acacia tree. In a small depression among the roots lay the source of the blood scent, a lion cub. The cub was slightly larger than a house cat, perhaps only a few weeks old. Its golden fur, with the light down of its childhood, was smeared with dirt. An open wound on its hind leg, still oozing blood, stained the damp ground below. Instinctively, Asha should have seen it as easy prey. A wounded lion cub without its mother nearby, an ideal target for any predator. But the cub's weak gaze triggered a different reaction in Asha, one that was rooted in her early years among humans. Instead of attacking, Asha approached slowly, lowering her head, presenting a non-threatening stance. The cub tried to crawl deeper into the hollow under the tree, emitting a weak growl, the last instinctive sound of defense. Asha stopped, keeping her distance. She lay down, resting her head on her forepaws, and simply watched. For the next hour, the two creatures remained in this position. The old hyena lay motionless. The cub gradually calmed down. The sun rose higher, and the heat returned. Asha saw how the rays of the sun began to break through the tree canopy, gradually approaching the cub. For a wounded and dehydrated creature, a few hours in direct sunlight could be fatal. As if realizing the danger, Asha stood up and approached the cub again. This time there was less resistance. With amazing gentleness, Asha carefully took the cub by the scruff of the neck, the way cats carry their young, and lifted her up. The cub did not resist, her small body sagging in Asha's mouth. The old hyena moved carefully across the savanna, avoiding open spaces in the scorching sun, heading for her rocky cave. On the way, Asha stopped at a small depression in the shade of a baobab tree. The hole was deep enough to provide shade, and much cooler than the surrounding air. Moreover, there was a thin layer of moss at the bottom, a sign of precious moisture. Asha placed the cub in the depression and began to lick her wound. Her saliva, with its mild antiseptic properties, could help clean and heal. The lion cub, whom the researchers later named Kira, gradually relaxed under this unexpected care. Perhaps the presence of a larger creature providing care brought back the sense of security she had lost when separated from her mother. No one knew for sure what had happened to Kira's mother. Perhaps the lioness had been killed by poachers, a growing problem on the outskirts of the reserve. Or perhaps she had fallen victim to other predators, such as packs of hyenas, or even crocodiles at the watering hole. In the harsh world of the Kalahari, orphaned lion cubs rarely survive, but Kira was lucky. Instead of meeting a predator, she found an unexpected protector, an old hyena who no longer fully obeyed the laws of the wild world. A creature who, like herself, lived on the border between worlds. In the days that followed, Asha continued to care for Kira. During the day, she kept the cub in a cool depression, occasionally bringing him small scraps of meat from the kills she had taken. At night, when the temperature dropped, she would move Kira to a warmer rocky cave and curl up next to him, sharing body heat. The wound on Kira's paw was gradually drying, but the healing process was slow. Without proper medical attention, the wound began to become inflamed. Kira ate less, and despite Asha's efforts, the cub's condition worsened. Asha seemed to sense a sense of urgency. She became restless, often pacing between the rocky cave and the edge of the area where safari tours often passed. From a safe distance, she had watched humans for years, enough to know that they had the means to heal wounds that nature could not. One morning, when Kira's condition was particularly bad, Asha made a bold decision. She gently picked up the cub and began the long walk to the safari camp on the edge of the reserve. It was not an easy walk. Asha had to move carefully so as not to aggravate Kira's wound, while also avoiding other predators, especially wild hyena packs. With the cub in her mouth, Asha was an easy target, and the hyena pack's strong territorial instincts would not forgive such an intrusion. After many hours of careful movement, with rests in the shade when the sun was at its zenith, Asha finally reached the outskirts of the safari camp. From a safe distance, she could hear the sound of car engines and the smell of people. Placing Kira in the shade of a large bush, Asha began to pace back and forth at what she considered a safe distance from people. Every now and then she made unusual sounds. Not the characteristic laugh of hunting hyenas, but a higher tone, almost like a moan. The safari camp was in the middle of a hot midday break. Most of the tourists were in air-conditioned tents, and the guides were relaxing in the shade. Only Kweku Mbali, a 62-year-old biologist, was checking the animal monitoring equipment at the edge of the camp. Kweku had worked at the reserve for more than 35 years, from a young ranger to a leading expert on wildlife behavior. He had been involved in many conservation projects, including the reintegration program that Asha had once been a part of. While setting up his tracking camera, Kweku heard strange sounds in the distance. His experienced ears immediately recognized that this was not the usual sound of hyenas hunting. Through his binoculars, he saw Asha pacing back and forth in an unusual manner. Looking closer, Kweku recognized a scar above her left ear. He leafed through an old notebook and found notes about a female hyena with a wound above her ear, released from the Johannesburg Zoo more than 10 years ago. Kweku decided to approach closer, moving slowly and non-threateningly. When he was within 50 meters, Asha stopped, watching warily but not running. After some hesitation, Asha returned to the place where Kira was lying, picked up the cub and walked out of the shadows into the open where Kweku could see better. She put Kira down, took a few steps back and looked towards the biologist. Kweku could not believe his eyes. A hyena taking care of a lion cub. Something completely contrary to all the laws of nature. He called Leah Tang, the camp veterinarian, and asked her to bring emergency medical supplies. Leah quickly arrived in an SUV with a medical bag. The young woman, a specialist in wildlife veterinary medicine, had never seen such a strange phenomenon. A hyena protecting a lion cub. Both approached cautiously. Asha was wary, but not aggressive. As they got closer, they could clearly see Kira's grave condition. The cub was thin and weak. The wound on its paw was badly infected. Kweku and Leah exchanged glances. They needed to get Kira for treatment quickly, but they also needed to consider Asha's reaction. No one knew how the hyena would react when they tried to take the lion cub. Leah took a syringe with a mild sedative from her bag. She slowly knelt down, keeping a safe distance from Asha, and began to speak in a soft, even voice. Although Asha did not understand human language, she seemed to be calmed by the soft, rhythmic tone. Kweku slowly moved to the side, creating a slight distraction. As Asha watched, Leah quickly injected the sedative into Kira. The cub barely responded, too weak to resist. They waited for the medicine to take effect. Asha licked Kira's muzzle, as if sensing that something was about to change. When the cub fell asleep, Leah slowly approached and carefully picked up Kira. Asha let out a soft growl, but did not attack. She seemed to understand that these people did not intend to harm Kira. Leah placed Kira in a pet carrier lined with soft blankets. Kweku placed a piece of fresh meat on the ground for Asha, but the hyena showed no interest in the food. She stared intently at the carrier containing Kira. As Leah started carrying Kira to the car, Asha suddenly followed her. No signs of aggression, she just didn't want to part with the cub. Koku and Leah looked at each other and made a quick decision. They let Asha follow the car, keeping the speed low so the old hyena could keep up. Back at the safari camp, Kira was taken to the emergency veterinary room. Asha stood outside the door, pacing restlessly. The other camp staff watched the scene in amazement. A wild hyena was roaming the camp freely, not to hunt but to guard the cub. Leah worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning the wound, administering antibiotics and fluids to Kira. The cub was seriously emaciated, but Leah remained optimistic. Lions are very hardy animals, and Kira was young and would recover well with proper care. Kweku stayed outside with Asha, setting out a bowl of water and food for the hyena. At first, Asha refused to eat or drink, but after several hours of vigil, fatigue and thirst forced her to drink some water and eat a piece of meat. Night fell, and Asha still did not leave. Kweku placed a thick blanket on the ground near the door of the veterinary room. After some hesitation, Asha lay down there, her eyes still glued to the door where Kira was resting. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight broke through the acacia trees, Kweku found Asha still lying there, alert and wary. The old hyena had not slept much, her eyes fixed on the door of the veterinary room. Leah came out, tired but content. She had been awake all night, watching Kira. The cub had survived the most dangerous phase. Her body temperature had stabilized, and the wound had begun to respond to antibiotics. Kira was still weak, but she managed to drink some milk through a syringe. Over the next 2 days, a strange routine developed at the safari camp. Asha remained, never leaving the area near the veterinary room. The camp staff, initially concerned about the presence of a wild hyena, gradually became accustomed to Asha. The hyena did not cause any problems. She simply waited. Kweku started a special observation log. He recorded Asha's behavior, how she interacted with her environment, and especially with people. Asha seemed to remember humans. She was not afraid like typical wild hyenas. But she was not entirely comfortable either. She kept her distance from most humans, allowing only Kweku and Leah to approach. On the third day, Leah decided to let Asha see Kira. The cub was doing much better, able to sit up and eat a little. With Kweku's help, Leah carried Kira outside in a small cage, placing it where Asha could see. Asha's reaction was astounding. The old hyena made soft sounds, almost like a whimper, and approached the cage. Kira, recognizing Asha, also reacted. His eyes gleamed, and the cub tried to move closer to the hyena. Leah carefully opened the door of the cage, allowing Asha to come closer. The hyena gently licked Kira's muzzle, and the cub responded by rubbing his head against Asha's muzzle. It was a scene that moved even seasoned scientists like Kweku and Leah. Over the next week, a new routine was established. Kira remained in the veterinary room for continued treatment, but was taken outside daily for visits with Asha. Leah noticed that these visits had a positive effect on Kira's health. The cub ate more after seeing Asha, and seemed less stressed. Researchers from the University of Pretoria and international wildlife conservation organizations began arriving to witness this strange phenomenon. They recorded, photographed, and studied the relationship between Asha and Kira. Many hypotheses were put forward to explain this behavior, from Asha's maternal instincts being activated by special circumstances, to the influence of early human upbringing changing the hyena's response to other species. Kweku, with decades of experience, had a simpler view. He believed that both Asha and Kira were outcasts living on the edge of worlds, and that they had found in each other what they both needed, a connection, a sense of belonging. As Kira recovered and became free to roam, Leah and Kweku faced a difficult question: what to do with this odd couple? They couldn't keep Asha at the safari camp forever. It wasn't a natural life for a hyena, but they couldn't separate Kira from Asha either. The bond between the two creatures was too strong. The solution came from a smaller sanctuary nearby, a semi-wild controlled area where Asha and Kira could live together in a relatively natural environment, but under supervision. The area, called the Namibia Game Reserve, was a pilot project for animals that couldn't be fully released back into the wild, but weren't suited to a zoo environment. After 3 weeks of treatment, Kira was strong enough to move to her new home. The cub could now walk, though still with a slight limp, and had gained a significant amount of weight. The wound had completely healed, leaving a small scar, a permanent mark of her fateful encounter with Asha. Transporting her was no easy task. Asha had never agreed to go into a cage, and they didn't want to stress the old hyena by forcing her. Instead, Kweku suggested an alternative: put Kira in an open cage on a small truck, and let Asha follow voluntarily. On a cool morning, they set out. As predicted, when the car carrying Kira began to move slowly, Asha followed immediately. The convoy moved at a moderate pace, enough so that Asha would not tire. The Namibia Game Reserve was about 25 kilometers from the safari camp. It was an area surrounded by a light electric fence. enough to deter poachers and large animals, but not dangerous to the inhabitants inside. The area had a small pond, plenty of shade, and varied terrain, the perfect environment for Asha and Kira. On arrival, they opened Kira's cage and allowed the cub to freely explore the new territory. Asha walked carefully through the open gate, keeping her eyes on Kira. The old hyena seemed to understand that this was a safe place, their own space. Kwaku, Leah, and the research team set up a small observation station on the edge of the reserve. From there, they could monitor Asha and Kira without disturbing the strange couple. They set up remote cameras and recording equipment to collect data, even when they were away. In the early days, Asha and Kira were never far apart. The older hyena led the lion cub in exploring the new environment, showing him good hiding places and water sources. They slept together under a large rock that formed a natural shelter. The researchers provided regular food, but also monitored whether Asha taught Kira hunting skills. This was especially important for Kira's future. If the lion cub was ever to be fully released back into the wild, she would need to learn to hunt like a real lion. Surprisingly, even though Asha was a hyena with hunting techniques completely different from lions, she seemed to understand it. Instead of teaching Kira to hunt like a hyena, stalking prey until exhaustion, Asha encouraged Kira's natural instincts, stalking and ambush. One day, cameras captured Asha watching from afar as Kira, now much older, practiced stalking skills. The cub was still clumsy, but her natural instincts were slowly emerging. Asha did not interfere, simply watching, as if understanding that this was a path Kira had to take on her own. As the rainy season came, bringing new life to the parched plains, changes came to Asha and Kira's relationship. The cub, now an adolescent lioness, began to show more independence. She spent more time exploring alone, sometimes disappearing for hours before returning to Asha. The old hyena seemed to understand and accept this change. It was a natural part of Kira's maturation. Asha did not try to keep the cub close, but instead gave Kira the freedom to develop her natural instincts. One day, when Kira was gone for almost 14 hours, the longest time since they had seen each other, the researchers worried that the cub had decided to leave for good. Asha was also more restless than usual, pacing and occasionally looking in the direction Kira had disappeared. But as dusk fell, Kira returned. And for good reason. She brought with her a young gazelle, the first prey she had ever caught herself. Asha greeted Kira not with anger or jealousy over the kill, but with a noticeable relaxation, as if she knew she would return. Kira placed the kill between them, an almost symbolic act. In the wild, lions share food in a pride, but Kira, raised by a hyena, seemed to have developed a different instinct, the instinct to share. Asha and Kira ate the gazelle together in a scene that the researchers described as breaking all known rules of wild animal behavior. As time went on, the relationship between Asha and Kira continued to evolve. Kira had entered adulthood, becoming a healthy female lion with a shiny coat and strong muscles. The wound on her paw had completely healed, leaving only a slight scar as a reminder of the past. Asha, on the other hand, was getting older. Her age showed more clearly in her gait, and her periods of rest were longer. But there was a contentment in her aging eyes, a sense of peace she had never known during her years of living alone on the border of two worlds. One morning during the dry season, almost 2 years after Asha found Kira under the acacia tree, surveillance cameras captured a remarkable scene. A young male lion appeared on the edge of the Namibian game reserve. He had followed Kira's scent, attracted by the presence of a healthy female in the area. Kira and the male lion interacted cautiously at first, then more comfortably, getting used to each other. Asha watched from afar, not interfering with this natural mating process. In the following days, Kira spent more time with the male lion, sometimes disappearing for days at a time. But she always returned to Asha in the evening, like an adult child maintaining a bond with a parent. The researchers were faced with a difficult decision. The male lion was completely wild. He came from the world outside the fence, and his instincts pulled him back to that world. If Kira followed him, it would be a chance for the lioness to fully return to nature. But it also meant that she would have to leave Asha. Kwaku and Leah discussed everything carefully, and decided to open the small gate in the fence, allowing Kira and the male lion the freedom to come and go. It was a risk. Kira could decide to leave forever, or stay with Asha, but they believed that the choice should be Kira's. Soon after the gate opened, the male lion walked away, returning to the wild world. Kira stood at the gate, watching him disappear into the tall grass. The researchers held their breath, waiting for Kira's decision. The lioness stood there for a long time, as if weighing the two worlds before her, the promising wild world with a potential mate, and the safer world with Asha, who had saved her life and raised her. Finally, Kira turned and walked deeper into the savannah, following the male lion. Asha, standing nearby, watched Kira's departure with remarkable calm, as if she had always known this day would come. Thank you, friends, for taking the time to read this story. If it touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel to support us. See you in the next wildlife story.